Jack's face was covered in sand, but he didn't dare lift his hand to wipe it off. Behind him loomed a 300-foot cliff. At that moment, the only thing Jack could do was use all his strength to desperately cling to the loose sand beneath his feet. However, the sand was far too soft to support Jack's weight. Within seconds, his body began to slide down uncontrollably. In a panic, Jack spread his legs wide and pressed his head tightly against the ground to increase friction. This finally brought his body to a halt. Just then, his phone suddenly rang from inside his backpack. Jack tried to raise his hand to answer the call, but in the next instant, his body slid down a significant distance again. Jack was extremely tense, his entire body trembling as he pressed himself firmly against the ground. Despite this, he was unwilling to give up on this sole chance of survival. After some hesitation, Jack carefully raised his left hand and reached for the zipper of his backpack. But just as he was about to touch his phone, his body suddenly lost balance and began to slide down rapidly. In a desperate attempt, Jack used his hands and feet to push hard against the edge of the cliff, narrowly escaping danger. However, what was worse was that his body was now stuck on the edge of the cliff. Below the cliff lay hard rocks. The slightest relaxation would cause him to be smashed to pieces. Jack clung tightly to the sand with his hands and face, not daring to loosen his grip even slightly. 2 hours passed like this. At this point, he began silently counting numbers, calculating the intervals between the waves crashing against the rocks. Jack believed that only by seizing this opportunity to jump into the sea would he have a chance of surviving. After confirming several times, Jack found the right moment and leaped. Fortunately, he successfully landed in the water. However, due to accidentally hitting his waist on a rock when he fell, Jack only regained consciousness after a brief period of being knocked out. He then struggled to swim back to the surface and climbed onto the nearest reef. Having narrowly escaped death, Jack felt incredibly grateful. Just as he stood up to leave, he accidentally tripped and fell heavily onto the rocks, passing out once again. After an unknown amount of time, Jack was finally awakened by the lapping of the waves. He tried to move his body, only to find that his legs had completely lost sensation. It turned out that when he jumped off the cliff, his pelvis had been shattered by the reef. Only then did Jack remember his phone. However, after being submerged in seawater for an extended period, the phone was completely ruined. In despair, Jack could only helplessly gaze at the sky and begin shouting for help. But in this desolate stretch of sea, his cries received no response. After 24 hours, hunger left Jack dizzy and lightheaded. To increase his chances of being found, he drew an SOS signal on the ground. Still, no one appeared. Just as he was on the verge of giving up hope, a surfboard suddenly drifted into view on the surface of the sea.